Very good. It's 1:30. Thank everybody for attending our liquor control meeting, and we will begin with agenda item number 1, approve minutes of the June 19th, 2019 meeting.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, review liquor applications. 2A, application to issue a Class FA alcoholic beverage license to Crave Hospitality Fargo LLC, doing business as Crave, located at 3902 13th Avenue South, number 3643. Steve.
So we've received the application from Crave, which is, I think most people probably know, is going into West Acres. And they've applied for the FA, which is full alcohol, allows a bar, food sales must exceed the alcohol sales. We did the background check, or the police did, and there are no issues, either criminal history or credit history, for any of the 3 people that we did the background check on.
Okay, I guess, and if, Chief, if you have any comments, but the whole floor plan thing, and Grant, maybe you've talked about that in the past, do they have one, or will we receive one, or how does that go?
Yes, that's in the works. There's no issues with their blueprints. All good.
Okay. And Chief, do you have any further comments?
No, Steve covered it.
Okay. With that, any other comments? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 2B, application to transfer a Class A alcoholic beverage license from Firebox LLC, doing business as Firebox, to International African Restaurant and Nightclub LLC, doing business as International African Restaurant and Nightclub, to be located at 4554 7th Avenue South, continued from previous meeting. Steve.
So, yeah, this was on our meeting last month, and then subsequent to that, if you recall, last month, we knew that there was a resolution out there that set up some guidelines, and we didn't have our hands on it, and so we were able to get those before it got to City Commission. And in those guidelines, it said that if the applicants have had a felony within the last 5 years, that they wouldn't be qualified for or be eligible to get a liquor license. And in fact, the original applicant did have that. We notified them of the guidelines. And so then they withdrew the original applicant, Mr. Brown, and then substituted, I believe it's his wife. And so then we wanted to go back through the background check and then bring it back here. And so we got the background check from PD yesterday, and I brought it here for you for your review.
Okay, Chief, do you have any thing you'd like to summarize from that for us?
Sure. On the background check, there were no areas of concern in the criminal history. However, on the credit history, we have a number of unpaid balances or reported as loss. One was for $5,889. One was for $10,036. 3 credit accounts that had unpaid balances and were closed and reported as loss. One was 967. One was 962, and one was 916. 2 accounts were in collections and seriously past due. $480 to Comenity Capital Bank, and $381 to Comcast Cable Communications. I see a credit history here, and it's an extended period of time up to date, that we have some issues here of someone not taking care of their financial responsibilities. Therefore, my recommendation is to deny.
I just want to go back to the resolution. I'm going to learn to bring that with me every time we have an application now. And number 5 on there, it says that applicant's credit must be in good standing. Applicant must not have any outstanding unsatisfied civil or criminal judgments, including restitution judgments. And I don't know, I really don't know or understand the credit stuff as well, but maybe these don't rise to that level. Do you know, Chief?
Well, from what I'm seeing here, as far as court judgments, I'm not seeing court judgments here where the creditors have taken them to court to recover their losses. I just see that they gave up and closed their accounts and reported them as loss.
Very good. Any other comments from the group? Is there anybody that would like to comment from the public? If you don't mind using that podium, anybody's welcome, so come on up. And if you don't mind stating your name and your address, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Let's see, there we go. My name is Stephen Baird. I'm the attorney for the applicants. My office address is 112 North University Drive, Suite 120 here in Fargo. With the credit issues, I can speak a little bit to those. The larger amounts, the 10,000 and 5,000 odd amounts, there had been an issue of, don't exactly want to call it identity theft, but effectively identity theft with Mbalu, the applicant, and her ex-husband, where he had opened accounts in her name that she was unaware of, and became aware of a little later on as the relationship was ending and that sort of thing. For personal reasons, she chose not to pursue that as a criminal matter, not to really do much of anything with it, and just kind of let it sit and wash her hands of it. And that's where those come from. The amounts that are currently in collections, those were raised to her attention as part of the background check, and both of those have been paid. I know it was kind of short timing on this one, so I don't know that we have all of the receipts showing full payment for those, but full payment has been made for all the accounts that were in collections. So hopefully that kind of clears things up a little bit, gives you a little more of a background understanding of the case there.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? So, I guess the other thing was with the case of, with Corey Schultz and his background, a 2004 controlled substance, a felony. So is that too far in the past, or is that an issue? Because I think part of our rules are, that's pretty clear that a felony conviction disqualifies you.
It is, but we did say applicant or manager has not been convicted of following offenses for 5 years, and one of them is felony, and Mr. Schultz's, I believe, is like 15 years ago or something like that. So,
Right. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we've tried this once before with, I'll give you the example of Romo's, where there was significant credit history. His attorney spoke on behalf of him and vouched for him, and we approved his license, and then a couple of years later, he left a lot of people holding the bag financially, including employees, and ditched out of town. So based on the history of that and the credit history presented here before you, my recommendation is still no.
Any other comments? So do we have a motion?
I would recommend we deny this application.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
I
Opposed? Aye. Passes 4-1.
and this is just a recommendation that goes to the city commission. There will be a public hearing on the 29th, and so
And so I guess I will say to the representative, so if you have proof of that the bills have been paid current, that would be a beneficial thing to bring. And so you'll still have the same opportunity to speak to the group at that time. All right? Very good. Moving on. Number 3, Commissioner Gehrig, discussion regarding server training and compliance checks.
Sure, thanks. So we all, I think, were there during maybe, not everyone, but most of us heard the discussion regarding server training and our inability to provide enough space for everyone to get trained to the level that our ordinances say people need to be trained. So in thinking about that, I simply want to bring up the idea of allowing businesses to train their own people. The reason why I don't think this is a conflict of interest is because, one, it still has to be approved by the police department or by a representative from the police department. It would still be controlled in that regard. It would still be monitored. They would have to tell us who got the training and when. And if they didn't follow the training, then they could still lose their liquor license. This is one of the only industries I can think of where the government provides the training for it. Even the police department, you guys have your own training that you follow, that you create a syllabus for, and do those things. We do in the military. We create our own syllabus and we do our own training. Pretty much everything that every business out there has their own training that they go through on the job. I'm simply asking that we explore the idea or allow people, maybe in a pilot form, to do their own training if they want to. That does not mean that we end training as a government. We can still do our training. We will still have full classes, I'm quite certain. But if a business wants to try it and create their own syllabus and provide that training and show us that they provide the training that they were supposed to provide, that we see if that works and people want to use it. If people don't use it, people don't want to use it, then it'll be self-evident and we will stop doing it. But I guess I want to hear from this board is if there's any appetite to allow this to be tried, and if it is, if it's successful, then we can do it at a wider scale.
Very good, and I'd be interested in comments. And then I just wanted to point out that we all have a letter from Carol Schlossman talking about online training, and I guess my question to that is, the city of Grand Forks does that. Have we looked into that? And then I'll just make one more quick final comment. To me, the one thing I like about our training is that's the baseline. Most businesses do additional training other than that, but I think that's part of a good thing for us is we have a baseline, and we hope that people do more than that, but that's one of the things. So Chief Todd.
I think we're able to meet the demand for training. The health department did provide us some numbers of the number of classes we put on, the number of positions that are open within those classes, and the ability to increase those classes if need be. We train anywhere from 2,100, I think, to 2,700 people a year. And then we also have online training where people can take the online training, I believe it's every other time, so that they don't have to go to a classroom. I'm interested to hear from the licensees. Are they interested in conducting their own training, or is that something they have no interest in? I guess I'd like to hear from them also.
And I have one quick comment too, that the chief talks about the in-person training is, it also gives a chance for people to get to know some of the law enforcement. And I do think that's a beneficial thing, to be able to meet them and know that they're fellow human beings and they're regular folks, and the whole PR, being comfortable with them, to be able to feel, hey, I know them, I can call them if I have an issue or a question. And anyway, but I do like, I mean, especially for us, we're under pressure for budgets. Online would help save some staff time, you would hope, but the thing you have to be careful of is this whole in-person, being able to know people and be able to feel comfortable contacting them. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think the interactive dialogue that can happen between an instructor, which is a police officer, and people attending the class, I think that's valuable. And of course, we're always looking to increase our opportunities at relationships and partnerships and working together. I guess I'm interested to hear from the licensees. Are you having difficulty finding classroom space for your employees? If you are, how is that occurring? I guess, is there difficulty getting them in within a couple of months? And are your people using the online for the every other year opportunity?
So if you wouldn't mind just giving your name and address, and anybody else that wants to comment, we'd love to have you comment. Go ahead.
Dustin Mitzel, Happy Harry's, 4402 Timberline Drive South. I would not be interested in training our staff just because of the volume of transition we have, to make sure that it was consistent and we had the people that were properly trained to train them. It would be not of interest to us. I think it would actually be a hindrance based off the guidelines the city has for us to make sure everybody's compliant, we're following all the rules. I would be interested though in amending the requirement for online, where you attend once and then you can do online next and then attend. I think all first-time employee or first-time server trainers or trainees should go through the course. But after that, I think an online is adequate to continue every 3 years of getting a renewal. I mean, I've had to go to the class since 2003, and I find it to be redundant for me. But when I did the online the first time, the last time I had to renew, I actually had to pay attention more because you have to pass. And so you have to, follow the instructions more than just sitting in a class listening to somebody speak, because I've done it so many times. So I would be interested in a first-time requirement for an issuance to go to the class, and then after that, online renewals, because that would take pressure off the amount of classes you'd have to offer.
Can I ask you a couple questions? First of all, do you think the whole meeting some of the law enforcement in person is a beneficial thing?
It can be. It depends on the officer. Some officers are very approachable. Some of them are more by the book, matter of fact. And I think some of the younger employees are maybe a little nervous or scared to push some of the questions maybe they would ask, depending on the individual instructing.
Can I ask you one more? So you obviously have locations up in Grand Forks, and so can you talk a little bit about that?
The online training works just fine. It's a simpler process. It doesn't seem to be a problem up there. Thankfully, knock on wood, we've had very few issues over the years with staff and failing compliance checks. So my team up there feels that the online is adequate.
Any other questions?
Not for him.
And I'm not opposed to what he's suggesting, a first-time classroom experience and followed up by online training after that. I'm not opposed to that.
My main concern is just the last 3 or 4 years in our market, it has been very challenging for any business to hire, especially that part-time employee, and they roll around so much that if we have 16 kids that get hired between our 3 stores in Fargo, and none of them are server trained, and we're required to do it, we want to do it properly, and I don't know if it's December 4th, if we're going to be able to get that taken care of on our end.
Can I ask you a question? And I didn't mean to jump out, but so do you agree with this statement that it's kind of a baseline? It's a good baseline. There's lots that you learn after that, part of it by working the job. But the way I look at it is the city is providing a baseline, and hopefully you learn more after that.
Sure. I mean, when those of us that have been in the industry a long time, we can identify somebody that's intoxicated that we can't sell, that we know the basic rules. Some of the new kids that just turned 20 and that start with us, they've been in the bars and seen things, but they've never had to be responsible for not selling to somebody. So sitting in a classroom, hearing it from a police officer reinforces it. After that, if there's a law change or something that you need to adjust into the online, those updates I think would be sufficient for somebody to follow through there, take the test, and make sure they pass.
Any
Yeah,
other?
so Steve, I want to hear from them too. I want to hear from the industry locally here too. If we can send an email out to folks and just say, hey, what do you think about this option? And they can watch this video or whatever else to see the context of the conversation. But if they have an opinion, which I'm sure they do, I'd like to hear about it. Thank you for explaining your piece there. That's a liquor store. Maybe a bar owner would have a different opinion. I don't know that. The point what I'm trying to make here is that we're always asking for more officers, we're asking for more, compliance checks, we're asking for more and more from our officers, and then we're steeping on more of the stuff we don't need to be doing if the industry doesn't want to. If the industry does want to, by all means, we will still have the classes. All I'm saying is let's just have an option where you don't have to. You give us your syllabus, you show that you did the training, you give us the roster, we approve that syllabus, and we approve the roster, boom, you're good. Not every company is going to want to do that, obviously. Not every company is going to have the time to do that, but some industries might want to. Everyone's different. And right now, we are having problems getting everyone complied with our own law, and in part because of our own inability to have the classes ready. So it's just an option I think we should consider having. That way we don't have to hire more officers. And even the idea of not having a test at the end of the initial training. I'm having a hard time believing that this server training is a silver bullet to fix all our ills. What we're doing isn't fixing all the problems. And I'm thinking that maybe the private sector could help us figure out how to do it better. We still have over-serving, we still have compliance checks issues, we still have drunkenness downtown and other places. And I'm thinking that a lot of us are lauding this as this is the fix for all those problems, when obviously it's not. So I think that we need to, as leaders, look at this, look at the issue we're having, if look at what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and being able to identify and admit where we're not doing the best, and try to find ways to fix that. Doing the same thing over and over again isn't going to fix the problem. So I'm asking that this board simply says that we are able to allow the company to do it themselves if they so wish with an approved syllabus by the police department, and we can move forward from there.
So I have a couple of follow-up comments. What I would like us to do, I support the first training has to be in person, but after that, for us to look at Grand Forks and maybe some other cities and review the online option just to see what would that be, what would it cost. But I have some concerns about having the businesses do the training themselves. I think we would have much more better control as far as the quality of the product if the city does it and it's in person. And then on top of that, it's very important for people to have positive encounters with law enforcement. And in person, it's a great asset. Even if they're uncomfortable the first time, at least they know someone, they know their name, they have their card and things like that. So that's my opinion. And anybody else, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I know Larry Annison from the Health Department's here, and he probably has a lot more knowledge on this program than any of us as far as classroom versus the online. Larry, if we went to an initial classroom experience and then online from that point forward, is there any additional cost?
Thank you for the opportunity, and no, there would not be any additional cost. And there are just some comments, if you don't mind, that I would like to make related to the server training. Just some things to keep in mind. We've been doing server training in Fargo since 1999, and we've served thousands and thousands of servers have completed our course. Last year, like was mentioned, over 2,200 individuals completed our course, and we're on pace to increase that this year. Just some things that I think are important, because I know that there's been some information shared in the media that I just would like to correct. Typically, on an average month, we hold 4 to 5 classes a month. If we need to, we increase classes. Typically, May and June tend to be our busier months. That's usually around the liquor license renewal time. We have held up to 8 classes, and it's not an issue or a problem or a concern to get officers to teach those classes. Those classes are 2 hours in length. Initial class is $20, and I would agree. If we could keep that first class, I think it's extremely important that it's a live class. They get to interact with the officers, they get to ask questions, they get to hold IDs, look at IDs, ask questions. It's very valuable. At the end of each class, we have all the participants fill out an evaluation. So far in 2019, we've had over 1,100 evaluations. I'd like to share some of the comments and some of the percentages. A question we ask in the evaluations that the participants fill out at the end of class is, was the content of server training about right? 96% have indicated either strongly agree or agree. Did the class meet my needs and the information required to legally serve alcohol? 97% strongly agree or agree. The class taught me how to identify minors trying to purchase alcohol. 96% strongly agree or agree. The ID checking procedure I learned in this class was very helpful. 94.8% of the participants who take our server training class either rated that strongly agree or agree. And then just the last question. The class taught me some important intervention techniques to interact with intoxicated persons. 97% strongly agree or agree. And just 5 comments that I happened to look through the evals and pick out for you today. Comments that were shared: the course was very helpful, strongly recommend. The course, or I thought the training was very clear, thorough, and in-depth. The instructor was engaging enough to not make me want to fall asleep, was a comment from one person. And the class was eye-opening, informative, and I love the instructor's enthusiasm. Again, the comments were so, I appreciated hearing the importance that the commission felt in the comments about the importance of having our police officers interact with individuals who work in our liquor industry. Just a couple other comments I think are important. We did hold, so far in 2019, compliance checks in January and in May. And each month, we had an 88% pass rate for those individuals or those businesses that actually had a compliance check done. Are there things that we could and should look at? Absolutely, I would agree with that. One thing is our no-shows. I know there are some comments that people cannot get into classes. I'll be honest, we schedule, when people go online or they call in to schedule for a class, we can take up to 60 individuals. At any given class, we have at least 20%, sometimes up to 40% of a no-show rate. So people are not being able to get in, so we need to look at that and how do we correct that? So some individuals may feel like they're not able to get into their first choice classes. When classes do fill up, however, we do add, but that's an area I think we need to look at. Our online training. We currently do have an online training. A few years ago, we received comments from the industry, we should have an online server training component. I believe it's 3 or 4 years old. So we have that. Currently, they can't take that initially because we feel it's so extremely important that they have a live class initially, but then they can take it after that, and currently it's every other time. Server training needs to be completed every 3 years. I know Grand Forks and others maybe have an online course and they have some success. I will tell you, very few individuals utilize currently our online program. Very few. Most people tend to sign up and take the live class. Compliance checks. I will share, early on, when we first started, or years ago, it was my understanding that it was requested that we do a random check, so businesses did not feel like they were being singled out or targeted, so we randomly select businesses to go and do the alcohol compliance checks. I think we can look at that. If a business or an industry bar or whatever industry that serves alcohol fails, maybe the next time around, regardless if it's random or not, we check them again just to ensure. I know the ordinance says up to 4 times. It's difficult to get even close to that. So when we do check, maybe there's others, businesses that have a history of failing should have a higher priority of being checked. I think that's worth some discussion as well.
Larry, can I ask you a question?
You bet.
What would you say on average is the waiting time period or list of people waiting to get into a class?
It varies depending on the month and how busy. We monitor that, every day, every few days. I just looked on Friday, and I don't believe any of the 4 classes in August are filled up yet. So it does take a while for those classes to fill up, so we do monitor that. So typically, people are able to get in. However, if you wait till around liquor license renewal time, May and June, we have so many people that want to, so those classes fill up. They're not able to get into possibly their first choice or second choice sometimes. So if we can figure out a way, let's even this out. Let's spread this out so individuals can get out throughout the class. Right now, it's slower than what it was the last couple months, but we will add class if need be.
And you would say that a significant percentage of those people that are trying to get in during that liquor license renewal time could actually do it online if they so choose, but they're not choosing to do that?
Absolutely, which was surprising to me because that was a request. So we wanted keeping in mind the way the adult learner learns, some people I personally like the face-to-face, hands-on, so on. Other people like the online version. We wanted to try it and see if it would meet the needs. I was surprised that very few people take advantage of that opportunity, but currently it's still is an option for us.
My observation, just looking for the last 20 years, is how many, like, what are your records going, how far back do they go? How many renewals are done? How many are new issued server training cards? And how many people are in the system? To see, if 70% of the class is new server training people and 30% is renewals, and those renewals are people like myself or managers that have been around for 15 or 20 years, are they taking up spots in those classes that cause them to fill up? Because I would say, like, just from my standpoint, 70% of my part-time employees aren't there more than 3 years. They go off to their real-world job and they're an accountant or a banker or whatever it's going to be. So most of them never renew. The people that are renewing are people that are in the industry, as a career or for a long period of time, so they've been around a lot of scenarios. So the online component works for those individuals because they're not taking up a classroom. A lot of them probably have interactions with law enforcement. They know the people because they're the ones that are calling them with issues. Where the new person that's new to the industry needs that experience in that classroom.
I would agree with you.
So I would just like to see, like, the data, like how many, if you put my name in there, how many renewals can you go back and see?
Sure.
And then what percentage of the people are renewals multiple times or one time, and how many are new? And that might give you information to see, like, what your needs actually are for getting people face-to-face with those officers.
Correct. And we do have quite an extensive database, is my understanding, and we can track that and check to see, because that's how we determine how many individuals in Fargo, West Fargo, are currently server trained. Because what we're finding is, 69% of the businesses in Fargo, they meet the threshold of 80% of their servers, completing the server training requirement. And I think it's also important to keep in mind, sometimes when we start thinking of server training and serving alcohol, many of our standard bars have a very high compliance check pass rate, very high completion that their servers go through the server training class. We have to keep in mind, we're talking restaurants, we're talking hotels, and a variety of other businesses serve alcohols, and some of those businesses, tend to be some of our lower compliance rate folks. So, and again, many of our bars are doing a great job.
All right. I'm not understanding why we're assuming that the private sector can't do as good a job as what we're doing. And what evidence do we have that shows what we're doing is the best? 80% is not good. 80% compliance is not good. That's a fail in my mind. That's a lot of people that aren't getting trained. It's hundreds of people that aren't getting trained. So I'm wondering why we're so tight on having to have our government-run way be the best way when we are showing that we're not complying with our own laws, okay? Why not try something different then? That's what leaders do. They admit when it's not going the way we want it to, and then we adjust. That's what we're supposed to do. And with all due respect, if you ask a kid who's never served anyone before if they're able to identify someone after going through your class and they say yes, how would they know? They've never done it before. I get it. You're asking them because you want feedback, but they don't know. So again, there could be 100% people say they can do it until they actually try and do it, because we know they're not doing it because we do compliance checks and people fail.
Well, out of all due respect,
I wasn't finished yet.
Excuse me?
I'm not finished yet.
Okay.
We are asking the people who are administering the classes if their class is valuable. There's a conflict of interest there, okay? So I think we just need to be more open-minded about how we're doing it and be able to just ask the question, do people want to try this?
All due respect, our class is not broken. I truly believe that there is some real good products being produced with people who complete the class. The information that we gather from the class participants are extremely valuable, and we take those seriously. 80%, I would agree. I would like to see it closer to 100%. I would like us to have discussions on how do we get people into this class? How do we get them into this class is what I think we need to talk about. Do we need to discuss penalties? Do we need to talk about incentives? I'm not sure. But what I do know is we have a quality best practice program here in Fargo and something we should be proud of. And how do we get people into the class is what we should be discussing.
All right, any other comments or discussion or a motion or anything?
Yeah, I would make a motion that we recommend the city commission to allow businesses to train their own individuals after the first training. If they so choose, the syllabus has to be approved by the police department or a representative of, which is in compliance with our ordinance.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second for discussion here. And I'm going to look at Nancy because, and I don't have all the ordinances in front of me, but I think our ordinances currently do allow exactly what you're talking about.
They allow it,
Yeah.
You're right, it does.
So we're not talking, I
We need to,
guess maybe I'm a little confused. Were we talking about an ordinance change or no?
no, we need to allow, for one, we as a city commission need to just inform people that they can, if we so choose, offer us a syllabus to be approved by the Fargo Police Department. Right now, none of those have been approved. No one even knows that they're able to do it.
Right.
So I'm just saying for us, we need to just educate people that we can do that, have a public discussion about it, and say, if you want to do this, come talk to us, get your syllabus approved, and we'll do that. But you're right, the ordinance currently allows it.
So with your motion, I guess I'm just confused on what exactly the motion was.
I would like to encourage any business, no, you're right, we don't need a motion because it's already allowed. So I guess what hoping to do is,
That's what I could suggest,
No.
Commissioner?
Hey, I'm the chairman. I get to suggest at our next city commission meeting, if Nancy would be so kind as to just review in our ordinance saying, if a business wants to do their own, they do have that opportunity. And just to, because I think a lot of people weren't aware of that. So I think it's more of a, if you don't mind doing that, Nancy, as a PR thing, saying, but I do think the whole reviewing what we're doing now to make sure that we're doing as good a job as possible, I think a lot of people, the same thing, are online. I was under the impression that that was not available. So go ahead.
I just had just a question, Commissioner Garrig. If you would push forward with this, would the business, based off the approval of whoever with that syllabus, would they then reach out to the city and say, John Doe is passed the class, and then the city would issue the server training card, or how would that process go so that we're compliant as far as our employees being server trained?
whoever you currently approves the training, or whatever roster you sign at the end of that training, would go to those same people. And I guess you would get your server training card if you'd have to go and get it, I suppose. But I'm not quite sure how that'd work because no one's ever done it before.
My concern with that is you could have a business that is diligent and wants to make sure that's done, and you could have a business that is scrambling, trying to get people hired, and they say, yeah, they're done, send it off. And so businesses aren't apples and apples anymore. They're supposed to govern themselves, and the city's just going to give them a card.
Just like any other business. I mean,
Oh, yeah, but there's penalties. Like, this is a privilege to have a license. It's a privilege to sell this product. If we sell to a minor, we're in trouble. We get fined. We could lose our license. So we're already beholden to the city to have the privilege of having that license. But now we're going to have the Wild West with people just saying, yeah, those three are good, get the cards going. And then I sit there and want to make sure I'm diligent, make sure my staff actually goes through the proper protocol and
would you
training.
risk your license to do that?
Huh?
I don't know a lot of business owners who invested in their bar or restaurant would just risk their license to get two people a card.
Well,
I wouldn't do
can't
it.
I can't speak for every licensee in
nor-
North
nor-
Dakota
nor
or
could
Fargo
I.
or West Fargo.
And nor could I, but I don't assume why we think that the worst will happen. We're thinking about the worst case scenarios all of a sudden, when what we're doing is at 80% compliance. What we're doing is not working.
I think respectfully, I think if we're beholden to make sure that our employees are server trained, there has to be some check and balance. And if that check and balance happens to go through the city through a training program, then I'd prefer that over saying, you guys do this and you guys do that. I think we're sending a bad message to our industry that, you know, you're gonna self-police it, and then it's my word that my guys are good and gals, and you're gonna send a card out. I think you can't have an ordinance and then have it, you know, willy-nilly on the back end and let the businesses self-police it. I don't see that festering a good result down the road, in my opinion.
Almost every business operates that way.
Not every business has to go to the city to get a license to do
Right,
business.
you're right.
So
Most
I mean,
of them
our
shouldn't have
industry
to.
is specialized. Every time there's an accident in the paper that involves alcohol, our industry gets a black eye because we did something wrong. So I just think that if we're gonna have ordinances require us to have server training, we need to have some kind of process that's consistent, respectfully.
Thank you. Next person, if you don't mind giving your name and address, thank you.
Hi, Carol Schlossman, 505 Broadway, North Fargo. And yes, we sent the information online and have had a discussion with the chief and others. Our goal is truly to get more people trained, and when we have 31% not in compliance, that's an enforcement and accountability issue. They have, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 months in order to be trained from the date of hire?
Yes, that is correct.
That is a significant amount of time. And so the bars and the restaurants and the hotels that are doing a great job should be applauded. And that 31% that aren't being accountable should be held accountable. And we certainly respect the city's baseline for training. And this is, I am representing the Downtown Neighborhood Association. And so thank you for that training. The reason we're suggesting, and we support Steve's to position that more time, the longer you're in it, then online is more viable. However, how do we get that 31% to actually be accountable? Thank you.
Very good comments, thank you. And I do agree, the one thing that we have to debate is whether you use a carrot and a stick, and we haven't really used a stick ever. And so we kind of had the same issue with people renewing their licenses, and we changed our philosophy there, and now we have a very good rate, and so that might be something for us to think about too, that back in the day, there was a few businesses that were chronic that they never renewed their license, and then when we had a penalty, now they all do. And so I guess that's up for discussion too. However, it is summer and it's nice out, and so we could discuss things for a long time. I think this is a good topic. If you want, we do have a motion, and so.
Yeah, what you said is fine. I'm good.
Okay, so we'll let that motion move on. Do we need to take action on it, Steve, to follow the
I
rules?
think he can withdraw the motion.
I'll withdraw mine, and
Okay.
what you said is just fine. We'll have
Okay.
discussion.
Okay, so can you use the microphone, Nancy, just so we can?
The second will withdraw also.
Thank you.
Okay, so that motion has been withdrawn. Once again, it's great discussion. We'll continue this on the agenda for future meetings, if that's okay, because I think it's an issue that there are still things that we can discuss about that. And we will move on to number 4, and that's the penalty matrix update. Steve?
So the chief has taken the penalty matrix and gone through. We didn't get a lot of feedback from any of the industry, I think just one comment. And so basically what he has done is marked it the way that he would like to see. And maybe I should just let the chief describe what it is that he's done here.
So, Mr. Chair, you were talking about the penalty and or the carrot and the stick, and so here's the stick piece of it. You know, we've been talking about this matrix for a while, and so I hope you are okay with me going ahead and putting some suggestions forward so that we can get some traction. The matrix you're looking at right now was put together by Nancy Morrison and reflects our current city ordinances, and then we kind of compare that to the matrix we came up with in our subcommittee, which reduces it down to 5 steps. And so what I'm trying to do is take existing ordinance and kind of trying to do something similar to what we came up with in our subcommittee, as basically eliminating the second offense and the 6th offense in a number of different categories or different ordinances. And then there's a couple of different ones that allowing or serving people that are already intoxicated, taking out the second offense and the fourth offense. The other big change too is on 25-15-14, which is the very last ordinance on the second page, and that's the inspection of licensed premises. I think that's an important ordinance, and that needs to have a little stricter enforcement, being that either the police department or the health department can inspect the premises at any time according to ordinance. And I don't know why we would give somebody 7 bites at the apple or refusing inspection of their premises. So I reduced that down to three offenses on that one. I'd like to open it for discussion or thoughts or suggestions and kind of move from there. I know that we've suggested having a brown bag with the full commission on this, but I felt like if we didn't have something to present them, that we'd kind of spin our wheels in that meeting too. So that's why I put together these options.
Go ahead.
This is a rolling box, right? So it's an 18-month period or whatever it is over. It's not. It doesn't stay at one point. It rolls with it. Correct.
Well, I'd like to include Nancy on that discussion. The other part of my suggestion is a 12-month rolling.
Right.
So that if you are clear of any offenses for 12 months, then you can start over. But if April 2nd you have an offense, your 12 months starts.
Yep.
Okay.
Nancy, did you have something to add?
I can add that the way it's presently interpreted is it's an 18-month, so if any of this happens in an 18-month period, and unfortunately, it's kind of like you start anew at 18 months. So it's not set up as a rolling presently, and that's one thing that we're looking at doing is making it a 12-month period, and if you get a first offense and you go 12 months without a second offense, your next offense is a first offense. But if you go 3 months, it's a second offense, and then you have to go another 12 months before you get to the first offense.
We all agree on that, right? Yep. Okay. And then this is not binding, correct? We can do worse if we want to. If someone has an ugly offense and it required, let's say they sold to someone under 21, but it happened to be someone very young, or for example, we're able to still suspend their license when we want, correct? Okay.
Nancy, is this definitive in our ordinance, or does it give discretion?
Well, I'd like to take a look at that again, but I don't know that there is that discretion. I don't think that there is an age range for a violation of the offense. It is if you sell to a minor, that's an offense, and it impacts your license. If you sell to somebody that's over-consuming, that's an offense, and it violates your license or impacts your license. I don't think that we have a degree of the violation
Let me ask
presently
it a different way.
ordinances.
If we choose to pull someone's license for any reason, we can do that.
Yes and no. And of course, there's the due
Lawyers.
process requirement of doing that. So it depends, is your typical lawyer answer to that. If you have a violation and if you're having repeated violations, or if there is a basis for determination, then you would be able to suspend the license. They would have a hearing before this board and could appeal that to the city commission board.
Any other comments?
The only thing I'd say is, we're just getting this first eyes on it, so let's, if you don't mind, let's take a month to look at it. I'll get this back out on the web, and we'll see if we get any comments from the industry.
Yep.
That sounds good.
Yep, that's great. Any other comments? Very good. The last item on our agenda is Steve talking a little bit about our Sunday closure. We had some questions on that.
Yeah, recently we had some questions regarding, the North Dakota blue laws have been repealed. And so there were some questions, does that affect the alcohol? And nowhere in there is alcohol now allowed to be served any sooner than it was previously. So we stay with alcohol under the same rules. Off sale not before noon, on sale not before 11. So just wanted to get that in the public and make sure everybody's got that.
Very good. It's 2:19 on a beautiful afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have a great day. We are adjourned.